welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 3773 East Broadway. This is the Jake Feinberg Show, coming to you on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live. Download our free app and stream all of our live local programming, including Solomon on Blast, the Jim Parisi Show, and yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. And we can't thank you enough for making us part of your day today. And without further ado, I want to bring in a master of his instrument and a guy who's been stretching out ears and creating vocabulary in music over the last half century. Doc Kupka, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thanks, Jake. Glad to be here.
We have a game on this program called Name That Voice. I want you to take a listen to this and listen to the content, and then we'll come back and break it down, okay?
Okay.
He's really into transcendental meditation. I never was, and I wasn't searching to expand my consciousness. My mind, I had blinders on. I was into music, and I was into soul music in particular at that point, and that's where I was at. And what happened is Doc, he liked what I did with a lot of these songs that we were doing. We would take obscure soul music, and then I would put a different spin on it rhythmically, and I would make up bass parts that fit to these new rhythms that I taught my brother on the drums, and then I would teach the guitar player, Jody, a different kind of rhythm than what was on the record, so that we could make this sort of fabric, and it was unique. And Doc came to me and he said, what you're doing with these songs is so unique and so special, but why are we doing it to everybody else's songs? Why don't we write our own? And, I don't think I would have ever thought of that. I was absolutely happy doing what I was doing. But I said, I'm up for trying that. And we made an appointment to get together to write. And that's when he suggested that, I might smoke a joint and drink a little bit of this Bacardi and Coke. And, it was kind of like, that's what people did when they got together to create at that time. This is like 1969. And, a lot of my friends already were drinking and using, but I was never into that,
Right.
I was into music. And, but then, like I say, it was like, I'm an alcoholic and I'm a drug addict. And that was like, the switch flipped on.
Yeah,
even from the beginning, I noticed, like, as soon as I learned how to do it without, ODing, as it were, I wanted to just keep doing it. Doc would say, well, let's save some, let's write a little. I'd be like, well, let's write, but, fire up another one.
Who is that, Doc?
Oh, that's Arizona's own Emilio Castillo.
Phoenix's own Emilio Castillo, and that was back from September 28th, 2015, live radio broadcast on the Jake Feinberg Show. And so he went through a lot of stuff there, but I did want you to talk about this. I mean, I understand hard drugs and alcohol are extremely addictive, but can you talk to the audience about ultimately how that creative process led to so much danceable music? Because the truth of the matter is, yes, I know there were deep valleys, but you know what? What he was talking about was spot on. It was finding a way to not push the bar too far, but ultimately create these danceable grooves that still hold up better today than they did maybe back then.
Well, back then, that's what you did, and that's what you did gladly. The only people we knew who didn't get loaded was the Osmond brothers. And, me and Donnie Osmond joke about it to this day.
Right.
That he tells me how his old loaded friends are coming to him and saying they're clean now, and they should have done it then. But I tell you what, that we were able to write some very, very nice tunes. If you take my songs, which I wrote loaded, and compare them to the ones I wrote not loaded, which I haven't had a drink or a drug for 28 years now.
Mazel tov.
But the songs are no better now than they were then. It's just my life, got, out of control, and I could do nothing about making money from those good songs that I was writing. And, so, it works for a while. And then invariably, you do it like every day and too much every day, it catches up to you and then it doesn't work at all. So I'm very grateful that I had that creative impetus back then, and I'm grateful that I was able to stop and continue my career, which would not be happening today if I hadn't stopped drinking and using.
Could you talk about one of these spontaneous creation songs that you guys knocked out the first time in that kind of state?
Yeah, I can. That song "Willing to Learn," which is one of my all-time favorite songs, nice ballad from Urban Renewal. And we were up in Canada, in some little Western Canada, in some little town. I don't even remember the name of it, but a little tiny off-the-wall town, and lonely and cold and depressed. And I had always liked that song "Yes, I'm Ready" by Barbara Mason. That was one of my favorites.
Wow. I think Clyde Stubblefield was playing drums on that. Go ahead.
Wow. And anyway, so I wanted to write a song like that. So he got a bottle of vodka, and I got a bottle of like scotch or whiskey, some kind of amber fluid. And we got very drunk and wrote that song in one night. And, and it's to this day, it's one of my favorites. But I tell you, it's very few that, I could get that loaded and write a good song. But that one was like magic that night.
I mean, that's when I was just this morning, Emilio was talking about you guys listening to Curtis Mayfield and the Impressions, "This Is My Country," "A Woman's Love." You wanted to write a song that had a trumpet intro like that. He happened to be dating an older woman, and you knocked out "You're Still a Young Man" at that point. I mean, it must have been you couldn't keep up the content after a while. I mean, you guys just hammered this stuff. I mean, I'm just saying that this music has stood the test of time, but I mean, I don't want to be Pollyannish about it because you guys were hammered. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, and everybody really. I mean, I even talked to a cat, Richard T. Bear, where he just said, everybody was artificially leaving their bodies, and then in 1983 it just got too much, and he had to stop. And he eventually started having these picnics for cats, and it was the sober musicians picnic. And so I just don't want to glorify it, but at the same time, I wanted to ask you about the opportunities that you had to play with cats in and around the Berkeley area, specifically if you ever had a chance to play with Johnny Talbot or Kickin' Curtis Moore or any jazzers like the Montgomery brothers that used to come through prior to Extension 5 or Tower of Power.
No, well, it was the Motowns when I joined. And
the Motowns.
We played, yeah, that was after Extension 5. I mean, he had several names of bands before I joined. Black Orpheus was one, and anyway, but so it was the Motowns, and we just played ourselves. Once we started getting a little better, we had jams with Larry Graham would come jam, and the guys in Redbone, and even Stevie Wonder came one time. But as for local groups, Marvin Holmes and the Uptights, I think we did a gig with them. They were a popular soul band back then, and there's one or two other I can't remember now that we did a show with just very occasionally.
Could you talk about some of the jazzers that played the Barry sax, or just cats that the output? I mean, were you into cats like Sonny Payne or Coltrane, or from the jazz point of view, some of the bridges in your tunes, when you hit that section, it has the same kind of cosmic sonic transmission. And I'm just trying, before you ever connected with Emilio, what kind of jazz bag were you in? What kind of records were you listening to? And were you actually trying to play jazz?
I was intimidated by jazz. I come from a classical background. I played the oboe, and then I heard Otis Redding and James Brown and Sam and Dave, and I wanted to play, that kind of music. So I switched to Barry, and I learned how to play on my own. But in learning to play on my own, I never learned how to improvise very well. So jazz intimidated me. Like Jerry Mulligan, probably the best Barry player ever.
Sure.
I could hardly listen to him because he was so good. But I was in that. I was able to develop my own style, and kind of if there's, I like the Broadway shows, the Great American Songbook, and R&B is what I like. But if there's any jazz, I like, it'd be like Gene Ammons, funky jazz, the organ trio stuff, Honky Tonk Part 2.
Bill Doggett.
Yeah. And whoever that sax player was, he was just great. And I really like King Curtis. And turned out I like Charles Chalmers, the guy who played on all those Wilson Pickett stuff that when King Curtis didn't do it. So that was the kind of stuff I liked. And Howard Tate's greatest hits, that horn section was what we patterned our horn section after. I really liked that. And very dominant horn section with, big fat brass and stuff. So not big band, but, 5 or 6 horns they had in there. So that's what we patterned after.
Just going back to Mulligan, because, I know that you couldn't stand listening to it because his sequencing of melodic improvisation was insane. But how did you take from that and get to the point where you pushed yourself out and grew to find your individual sound, so that because you knew if you buried your head in the sand, you weren't going to grow. So, can you talk about a time early on when you fell down and failed on the bandstand, and ultimately how you overcame it?
On the bandstand, there's just a couple times through the years where I got too loaded and I couldn't play. I could barely play, and there's 2 times I can think of in particular. But, once I learned the book, and I'd coming from playing the oboe, my embouchure is very strong. And, so I always played pretty good. If I got too low, I'd get sloppy and overly happy, shall we say. And but
would that lead to over exuberance, or would it lead to timidity? Which one?
Probably over exuberance and just overt errors, So, but that didn't really, for as much as we were getting loaded, that didn't really happen too often. Just on occasion, I think that where I think we fell down as a band was after we had some success, just assuming it was going to, keep repeating itself, no matter what. So, taking it for granted. So that we fell down as a band, and I was part of that.
Right. That was humbling. It's interesting. You're waiting and you're saying, boy, this can't get any better, and it keeps getting better, and then all of a sudden just smacks you. I'm interested. The first rocker was very unknown. Link Ray was the idol of John Cipollina. You played with Link. Well, were you into those rockers? Who were the first rockers in Berkeley, like that you loved? Clearly you were coming from a soul, jazz, blues bag. You talked about King Curtis and Ammons. Those guys could play stone jazz, but they were doing stuff with the backbeat and the drums and the rhythm section that made it some more soul, more R&B. So, who were the rockers that you were checking out? You grew up in a bastion of regional music in Berkeley.
Yeah, well, I didn't check out rockers.
You were classical.
While I was learning to play,
yeah.
But while I was learning to play Barry, I worked as a roadie for a band called the Loading Zone, which was a popular R&B band.
Paul Farso and Linda Tillery, yes.
Yeah, right. And so that's what I was listening to, and because I was working with them while I was practicing the Barry, and but as for rockers, you know, I really like Elvis and just. But you know, that being said, I wasn't much of a rocker fan as such. You know, I've come to like Brian Setzer a lot, and you know, like that. But no, that wasn't me in those days.
It's just interesting because that I mean, John Allaire and Pete Lind and those guys, they were the first cats playing Fats Domino tunes at high school. This is more in the 50s. But you started heading down to Jack London Square, is that right, with Mick Gillette, and that's how you connected with Rocco and Garibaldi and those cats?
No, I was connected with Emilio and Rocco first. And Mick had been in the band, but I guess he got restricted. He was still in high school, then got restricted or something and couldn't play for a while. But then he rejoined, and so it was us. And then when we got the gig at Jack London Square, that's where we met Dave, because he was playing next door, and, you know, with a band called the Reality Sandwich.
Oh,
and,
I know that band. I mean, that the Reality Sandwich was
Mark Roman and
yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that's when we hooked up with Dave. And Skip Mesquite was already around, and right around then Greg Adams showed up, and you know, he was playing with Sweet Linda Devine. That's how we met him. So you know, he got a young start. He was very young, you know. So when he was playing with Sweet Linda Devine, he was like 17.
I mean, Emilio talked about this cat who had like a big tire connected to his trap set called Dean Chapperlees. He was the drummer before.
Oh yeah, Dean. I think that's who Dave was subbing for.
So what I'm saying,
you know,
but he was in Emilio's band with whatever name it was at that. So that was before Kupka entered the scene. Is that?
Yeah. No, and I don't think he was with the band before I entered the scene, because Emilio's brother Jack was playing drums then.
Wow.
But this Dean, I mean, he was on the scene, I guess. I think he was playing with the Reality Sandwich, but I could be wrong. You know, whatever.
Did you ultimately? Could you talk about? Let's see. I mean, even though you were in this sort of, you were in a certain inebriated state writing tunes, when you were on the bandstand and you were and you were maybe not sober, but you guys were locked in. Can you talk about, to younger peeps around the world, Doc? This is so important. This is one of the reasons I do my show, because the only way you can create new vocabulary in music is by being in a unit for a long period of time, and ultimately growing big ears, listening, growing the collective consciousness of the group, which then connects to the peeps that are watching the show. And I would like you to talk about the evolution of that collective consciousness in Tower of Power, and how, if that was mentally challenging for you, especially with the drugs.
No, it wasn't mentally challenging. We had a lot of good. By the time we had that band with you know, Chester Thompson and Lenny Pickett, you know, that's the best band we ever had.
Absolutely.
And back in those days, people weren't getting in each other's way, you know, like a lot of physics, where if you're all moving in the same direction, it moves smoother and better. So you know, that part was easy. It was you know, and on the set it was easy. In fact, until I sobered up March 15th, 1989, there was only one gig that I was absolutely not loaded on anything with, and that was at Knott's Berry Farm, where they didn't tell us ahead of time that there was no liquor backstage and no beer even. You know, I remember I was really got hot about it. I thought it was so wrong, you know. But anyway, that was years and years. So the playing, as I say, except for the few times, it wasn't hard to play loaded. In fact, I kind of needed to be, you know, to get my mind right, as it were. And I'm glad those days are over. I'll tell you that.
How much of no, I mean, can you riff on? Take out the sobriety part of it. Just the collective consciousness of the group and how that translates to the transcendent connection with the audience.
Well, just it was very musical. You know, guys like Chester, Lenny, and David Garibaldi You know, and Rocco's like a savant. You know, he's just so good on bass.
Right.
He doesn't even know what he's doing. Hardly, but he just sounds so good. You know, and
so good,
other,
man.
You
so
know, Greg
good.
was a great arranger. Mick was a great lead player. I played very well, and Emilio was a good leader and a good section player, and it was easy to have the collective consciousness move in a positive direction. You know, it didn't start getting bad until basically, you know, the good like Pickett and Chester left for more lucrative endeavors, because at the end of the 70s, beginning of the 80s, it was a very hard time for us, you know, and a lot of it brought on by our alcoholic behavior, and I mean, you know, just not taking care of biz and taking it for granted. But anyway, so up to that point, it was great, and then it started to slip, you know, and we were still able to do good music, but it wasn't the same.
We have a truncated version here with Doc Kupka, who has to jam out in a minute. I see you on. I was talking to Wawa Watson. And he said because he's like every time he's like, I'm not ready to talk yet, and he's like, and I don't know, somehow I brought up the fact that I had just seen, because I saw you in January when you came to the Rialto here in Tucson. I did that Facebook Live, and I didn't actually introduce myself to you, but you guys were rocking out. That was right after.
Don't let that happen again.
Absolutely not. But Watson said to me, Watson was like, hey man, you seen that horn player around? And I was like, who, Emilio? He's like, no, Doc. And I was like, holy cow, dude. And then I was like thinking, well, maybe that's because Doc was tapped into the studio scene. And I don't know. I mean, how did you meet Wawa?
No. The reason he remembers me is we sat next to each other on a flight to Hawaii.
Oh my gosh! I
mean,
this is legendary.
Kind of jazz us all over there, and yeah, so we got to talk for 6 hours, whatever it was. So that is why, more than the session scene. I'm glad he remembers me.
No, he totally remembers Doc Kupka, man. It was so classic to hear from Wawa. He doesn't want to talk, but before we let you go, how did you connect with the studio scene? And was there a point in time where, I mean, you wound up, were you doing these kind of sessions where, when Tower wasn't on the road, you'd go in to the studios, could have been any of the studios down there before the sun came up, and you came out when the sun was down?
Well, we actually did more sessions when we all lived in the Bay Area at the record plant up in Sausalito.
Michelle Zarin,
but right. That's how we met Michelle, who was our manager for several years.
She loves you guys.
A lot of years. Yeah. Anyway, so that's when the session scene was most happening. And then in LA, it's much harder because there was so many more good musicians than there are jobs. But people who wanted Tower Power horn section, which back in the days before home studios, was somewhat in demand. They would use us, and we'd do a lot of sessions. But they're far and few in between now. Just, most of the sessions I do these days they want to add a Barry part, so I just go in and add a Barry part to what's already happening.
Well, that's a whole other. We need to discuss that, because when you take the human beings out of it, I understand it's cost effective and that our cost of living is so ginormous now compared to when you were coming up. But there's just something about the lack of intimacy there that it's just a little bit humbling. And bear in mind, I do realize that you got to sing for your supper. So, I mean, Doc, we just had that was like a really quick first set, man. I hope we can pick this up soon again. We have a lot more to do.
Let's pick it up. Let's pick it up very soon. So I'm around, and we can just line it up.
I'll text you some times, and we'll figure it out
as soon as possible. And I apologize. I didn't realize it was going to be this long, or I wouldn't have planned that important meeting.
No, listen, I'm sure it's important, but we stretch hard on this show. So make sure you clear out a 45 to an hour next time, okay?
Okay, next time I'll clear whatever you want, and I'll know in advance. Thank you so much. This has been great.
All right, it was fun, man. We'll do it again.
All right,
later on, Doc. Bye-bye. Later, bye-bye. Back inside the Parisi Palace, high above 3773 Broadway. This is the Jake Feinberg Show, coming to you on Power Talk, and thank you so much for making us part of your program, making us part of the program today. And had a truncated set one with this cat, but we're ready to get back. He's wide open today. Doc Kupka, welcome back to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Hey, thanks so much. I'm glad to be here.
It's good to hear you, brother. You know, I opened with that track because Bump City was cut in Muscle Shoals, if I remember that correctly.
No, Memphis.
Okay, that's right. Even better. That was my thing. That was it. Was it cut at Stax?
No, it was something Maximus. It was Steve Cropper's studio that he used. He wasn't with Stax anymore at that point.
Could you talk about? Okay, because I've heard stories from cats that were, you know, playing with the Bar-Kays and the Stax Records one. There was like a record shop in the front, and it was almost like a converted movie theater was the studio. But what did Cropper's studio look like? How intimate was it? And how much did that studio lend itself to the burning music that you guys cut?
Well, by that point, they had made some money, so it was not a storefront. It was a regular studio with pretty high-tech gear for the time. So it was not Poverty Row at all, but just Steve Cropper and Ronnie Capone being there. Ronnie Capone was the engineer. And he got credit for producing the record, but it's only because of contractual stuff. Steve Cropper could not say he was the producer because of something he was contractually involved in. But in every way he was the producer. And it was just working with him that got that vibe of Stax. It was great working with him. I very much enjoyed it, and plus we had been out of a contract for a little while, getting away from San Francisco Records. And so we had all the material was ready to roll. You know, it was basically go in there and cut. We didn't have to rehearse much. And that was good, too. That worked to our advantage.
I wanted to ask you a question. A lot of times I see younger cats today and on the bandstand, and they crank it up to 10 right out of the gate, and they don't ever lower the decibel level. It stays there the whole time. And I wanted you to talk to the audience about how you learned dynamic range, being able to take something from, you know, a whisper to a scream, or when you're in the middle of some really heavy funk jam to bring it way down. Dynamics are missing not only in improvisational music today, but definitely amongst pop singers too. You don't hear dynamics, and I just wanted you to talk about your evolution in terms of learning dynamics on your horn.
Well, there's two things. One is less is more, which works real good in soul music.
Can you unpack that? Can you unpack that?
You know, I mean, if you play, a whole bunch of notes because you're trying to be more impressive, it's less impressive than well-placed lesser notes. At least to me.
I did.
And the volume thing is the same thing. If you feel that in order to get your message across, you've got to be loud and proud, then the loud is less meaningful if you're not coming from a soft place to a loud place, or, you know, if you're varying the dynamics makes that loud more meaningful than if you're playing loud all the time. And, we learned that, a lot of those soul tunes, you'd be playing along and then the singer like James Brown would break it down, and then rebuild it up. And, we learned dynamics from that. And, fortunately, we learned it, and playing with dynamics is more musical. That's one thing I don't like about some of the modern music today is that it doesn't, where the melody be at. There's not as much music, although that's coming back more. But four on the floor, house music, dance music, very little melody and very little dynamics.
Do you how do you account for that? Is it the drum machine? Is it just how have we got? Because I mean, when you take the human out of the drum, the rhythm. I mean, the human rhythm is. I mean, you know, you had a conga player in that track. You had Garibaldi, and you know, when you're just looping some sample off a tune and playing it over and over. I mean, how did we get to from a place where there was just incredible, the drummers were playing melodically as well as keeping time, as to a point now where, like I said, they step it up on 10 and it never changes.
Well, you know, I personally think it's a lack of music in the schools. It's a big part of it, but I mean that may be true, maybe not.
But okay, hold on a second.
But, you know,
no, but I mean, like,
people.
yeah, but what about this idea? Okay, so I get that, but but I mean, Doc, there are cats every day, like they're going to these, you know, schools on. There's plenty of music in academia, but I don't think vocabulary can grow in because I mean, maybe not in primary schools what you're talking about, because at the college level, I mean, it's a supply and demand thing, because they're cranking these cats out with huge proficiency and facility, but they have no bandstand experience.
Yeah, well, just, you know, there's a lot of samples, like you say, and tracks and beats and all that, and just the younger people like to come from that standpoint. I mean, the younger rockers and stuff, and you know, just they weren't. The music was better then, as far as I'm concerned, and we got to hear that and try to emulate that. And so the music people are emulating now got less dynamics and less melody. And anyway, that's my theory.
Can you talk about a time early in the evolution of Tower of Power, or even before, when you guys were playing a live gig and had, like, you know, one monitor on stage, maybe a couple of. I mean, the point is that jazzers used to go on the road, and the bass wasn't mic'd, so they'd have to listen really hard for that upright bass, and your ears grew a lot. I mean, can you talk? Part of it's like everything's mic'd now. The tech is so amped up. Can you talk about a time when your ears grew the most, when you were really stretching to hear all the instrumentation, what people were playing, because you didn't have the technology in your ear?
No, I never looked at it that way, just because we always played into mics, and there was always electric guitar, electric keyboard, and electric bass. And we, at the beginning, we did not mic the drums. That didn't come till we started doing, you know, bigger venues. But just where I was, for me personally, if I could hear the drums and the lead trumpet, basically that's all I needed.
Explain.
You know, I mean, really.
Yeah.
And I mean, sometimes if what would hang me up is if the guitar or bass, and particularly organ later on, it got too loud. The organ tended to wash out my hearing the horns if they were playing too loud. So, but that rarely happened. I mean, the guy like Chester, oh my goodness, it was such a pleasure hearing him playing every night. You know, he could play as loud as he wants, but even so, occasionally it washed me out. But yeah, if I could hear the lead trumpet and the drums, that was cool.
So I mean, like, can you talk about playing a place like Frenchie's and Garibaldi's not mic'd, and what you're listening for? Are you listening for the bass drum, or I mean, I want you to break this down.
Well, I was always right in front of, you know, he was right behind me, so I had no trouble ever hearing the drums.
Right.
You know, mic'd or not mic'd, and I stood next to the lead trumpet player. You know, I mean, hearing the other horns and stuff too, a little bit, but I mean, if I could hear them too, it didn't matter. You know, I could play in tune and on time. So that basically it was the same then as it is now. On my monitor, all I have is me, and I'm the only one who does that. Believe me.
Interesting. How, in your mind, this is always a fascinating thing. Mike Clark has talked to me in our interviews about, the drummer has talked about, you know, when the Headhunters formed, when Tower of Power was well off the ground, but nobody said let's play some funk. Okay, they say let's play some funky blues or let's play something funky, but there was no word in the musical lexicon for the word funk, except that is now a word that is used to describe your music. So, were you guys using that word? When did you first hear the word funk used as in the musical vernacular?
No, with James Brown and we played soul music. We were a soul band. So funk and soul, it's kind of synonymous, I guess. And also in our case, we always played ballads too, which served us well through the years. Because our two biggest songs, So Very Hard to Go and which isn't a real ballad, but kind of ballad-like, and Still Your Man. So we did either fast tunes or slow tunes, and some in the middle, and they were funk tunes or soul tunes, whatever. I mean, from the beginning, that's what we called it.
From the beginning?
From the first. Okay, let's learn. Let's learn some James Brown songs. When I first joined, we didn't do originals yet. Let's do some Sam and Dave, Otis. Let's play some funk. Let's play some soul. Anyway, that's what we called it even then, back in 1968.
Wow, that's interesting to hear. That's very, because I mean that at least from the jazzer point of view, that there was no one. That's what Mike was saying. They weren't saying let's play some funk, but now that word is just.
Well, they were jazzers, and we were a soul band. There's a difference.
I want you to cut that line there. What's the difference? I as a non-musician, this is where the rubber. I listen to you playing the Barry sax and playing changes, and I mean. What's the line between the soul gut bucket Kupka and jazz? What is it?
Well, the thing is that I was never much of an improviser, and jazz is very much an improvisational thing. So I play parts, and so the word jazz kind of intimidated me at first. It doesn't anymore, but just. My job is not to improvise. My job is to make a horn section sound great and to write those songs. So I play in a soul band that some people equate with jazz, and that's fine. And because there's some jazz elements. I mean, when Chester Thompson was in there, Lenny Pickett, they not only played funk, they played jazz, and as do Roger Smith and Tom Pollicher now. So. Anyway, just like I always consider myself a soul musician. If you want to call me a jazz musician, that's fine, but that's not what I consider myself.
Well, could you talk about a story in terms of how you weren't scared by your shadow with jazz after a while? How you was there a demarcation line where you got comfortable enough improvising? Could you talk about how you eventually overcame that fear?
No, well, I still don't improvise much. I still don't. That's not my.
But you said you were scared. You said you were scared of jazz, and then you weren't.
I was intimidated by the word jazz, but just after we had some success, and then I just hear all these people saying the jazz funk band Tower of Power. I mean, a lot of people consider us a jazz band. It just became okay. That's what I play, and that's good. There was no. One day I was intimidated. The next day I wasn't. It just kind of. Grew into an understanding that that's what a lot of people consider us, and so that's what it is.
Talking to Doc Kupka here on the Jake Feinberg Show here on Power Talk. Can you explain why or how does the music remain challenging? You're on the road right now. You had a couple of gigs last couple of days, I guess, with Tower.
Yeah, right.
I mean, when I saw you guys, it was high energy, up tempo. Everybody was cooking and having a ball. It wasn't like you were dropping the bar lines and getting real free or anything. It was very tight. And I just wonder, at this point, how do you stay? What still gets you off about playing these tunes? I get that the audience wants to hear the great hits, but for you as a musician, and again, you're not an improviser per se, but what still is what still gets you off about the tunes?
Well, what I try to do is I play in tune and play tight, and try to at least look decent up there and be into it and play hard. It's great music, and I'm proud of it. And a lot of them are songs I wrote anyway. And the horn section sounds tremendous. The or almost all the time, and the rhythm section is just great. And by the way, David Garibaldi's coming back. He's very close to be in October. He'll be back full time again. So
where were you?
That's nice.
Can you describe the feeling of that night at Yoshi's when him and Mark were struck by that train, and what was going through your head?
Oh, it was just awful. I mean, it was about 10 minutes before the show, and so they were running slightly late, and Dave rarely, if ever, runs late. So I imagine that might have had something to do with it, you know.
Sure.
Him not seeing that other train. But, you know, and all of a sudden you hear screeching brakes, and, you know, the train tracks are just right outside the stage door. You know, it's about, 25 feet from there. And screeching brakes, and then somebody got hit. Two people got hit. Oh, it was Dave and Mark. You know, it was just like a bad acid trip. Not that I took too many of them, but
no, it's really it gets real bad, man.
I can imagine it was just very surreal, very ugly, and very all wrong, and very just not good at any level. And then so I phoned a few people to let them know not to show up, and called my wife because I know she'd be hearing it, and let her know it wasn't me,
right.
And what had happened. And it was just kind of stuck around for a little while, and then wandered back to the hotel in a daze. And, it was like we knew Herman Matthews could, he's our ex-drummer, and he subbed the whole time when Dave had his hips done, his hip replacements.
Sure.
So he'd done almost a year before, and he did almost a year again.
Dude,
Herman's great. We're so lucky to have him.
Well, that's the video I took of you guys in Tucson. He was on fire. I mean, I just wanted to hang with Garibaldi just because we've done several interviews, and I wanted to just check out his unique style. But Herman, man. I mean, he was laying it. He was holding it down, and then some. It just was grew. And then Roger was playing, kicking pedals and actually just playing melody on the B3. But I mean, can you a lot of people. I mean, David obviously is well on the mend and going to get back on the bandstand October 1st, I guess. But can we get an update on Mark? How is he doing?
Mark's playing again, and Mark let it be known that if Rocco gets sick again, he can fill in. So. He's healed up pretty good himself, and they played a gig together, a casual up in the Bay Area a week or two ago. So he's doing much better, and definitely they're both on the mend. Dave's almost there, and Mark is a little behind him, but he's catching up. So thank God both of them are okay. More beyond, they're healing up good.
Do you What can you say about Rick Stevens? He recently left us. What was his legacy to Tower of Power? What was your relationship with Rick?
Well, there's the good Rick and the bad Rick, and the good one could sing it. He could sing it. He could sing anything, any song, any ballad, any sophisticated ballad, anything. He sang great. And when he was on stage, when some people were soloing and he was playing his his tambourine, was way into it. He was very popular with the girls. But then when drugs kind of took over, he didn't deal with that well, and had that incident where, he killed those drug dealers and all that. So that was a bad Rick, but I guess you'd say the drug addicted Rick. But he was in jail 35 years. He got it commuted by Jerry Brown, the Governor Brown, and so his last 5 years he was out and doing some gigs, and he sang with us 3 or 4 times. It was always nice seeing him, and but then he got sick. We knew he was sick, so when he passed away, we knew there wasn't much time left. The word was out on that, so it wasn't a shock, but it was he was someone I made music with successfully, and he sang "Still a Young Man," maybe our biggest tune, and I'm sorry he's gone, and I was glad we were able to work together when we did.
How did you? Who was the original singer in the band?
Well, the original singer was Emilio, but then when we got a lead singer, and the original one was Rufus Miller.
That's right.
Who sang on East Bay Grease, except Rick Stevens did Sparkling. Rick Stevens and Skip Mesquite sang Sparkling. And see, Rufus at the time had node surgery, so he couldn't, we were doing 4 sets a night and stuff, so he couldn't do the full load. So Rick came and shared the load with him. And then Rufus, who also passed away recently, not that long ago, he wanted more money and all this and that and the other thing. And so Emilio gave him his walking papers, and Rick just took over. And at that time, he had no trouble making 4 sets a night, so then we went on from there.
It's phenomenal. Quick question. Do you remember the name of the band Rick Stevens was in before he joined up?
Yes, Stuff. Stuff.
He was in Stuff. Okay.
Willie.
Okay. I have
Willie Fulton was in that band too.
This is interesting because I was talking to this mercurial bass player, Rollerbert Cast, and he said, I first picked up the bass guitar in late '68. Prior to that, I was going to a club on Mission Street called the Rock Garden. Rick Stevens had a band playing there. Okay, that must have been it. It's called Stuff.
Oh, Rick and no, there was another one he was in before. Yes, back then Rick and the Ravens or something. I don't know. But there was another band that he might have been in. It might have been Stuff, but I don't think. I think back then, no, it wasn't Stuff yet. I don't think.
Yeah, well,
but that's what he was in right before he joined us.
Yeah, and this is what I want. I'm going to get to the bottom of this, but what I wanted to ask you is if based on where we were at. I mean, Sam Cooke, Ray Charles, James Brown, Rufus, and Rick. Can you talk about where they fit in? Were their voices the reason Tower of Power made hits? Or how did their voices? How are they just different? You can't be who I forget who was talking. Somebody was like, I was transcribing the other day. They're like, it was Howard Scott from War. They had a band called the Creators, and they backed up Deacon Jones, the NFL football player, and they had the James Brown Live at the Apollo down to a T, right? But then at a certain point, you realize you can't be the James Brown cover band forever, and Rufus and Rick did not sound like Marvin Gaye or James Brown. I mean, what did they add to the band music from a voice perspective that was different than the cats that came before them?
Well, Rufus was real raw, so those fast songs that were a specialty. His ballads were kind of his ballads. He had a harder time with ballads, and they would be kind of like Bobby Womack sounding ballads, or
I dig.
With rough, or even Joe Tex ballads. So, but Rick was a lot smoother. So he could still sing the fast stuff, but he was better at the mid, the So Very Hard to Go and Still a Young Man kind of songs. And then Lenny Williams, who a lot of people, he's our favorite. We had our most success with him. We had the most successful records and all that. So Very Hard to Go, he sang, and What Is Hip and all that. And he was very distinct. When you heard Lenny Williams, you knew it was Lenny Williams. And he had that lick, that lick that he does so successfully. And anyway, so they each added something. And but I mean, I personally believe, being the songwriter, that having good songs to sing, whoever was singing them was able to have good songs to sing on, and that has something to do with
absolutely. You got to have a story to tell. And this is so that's just to be clear. I mean, just for the audience that may just be tuning in or just getting hip to Doc Kupka. I mean, it was really a machine with a lot of moving parts because Rufus and Rick and Lenny were they writing songs, or was that essentially Emilio and you?
Just Lenny Williams was, for sure. He wrote a bunch of songs before he joined, and I mean his "Don't Change Horses in the Middle of the Stream,"
my favorite.
"You're the Most," just when we started making it, and he helped on "Main Nerve" and part of "Can't You See." So I mean, he had a lot of songs that he wrote, and he's been writing ever since. So, but the other two guys didn't.
So and so that was primarily. Could you talk? I mean, it's not like Doc came in with lyric sheets and plopped them down. And I mean, when you had a certain sound in your head, can you talk about a time how you worked? I mean, what I'm talking about is cooperation and teamwork in a band where the guy comes in and he's the one with the pipes. No one's coming to hear Doc Kupka sing, okay? But you're the one that wrote the tune. You have a feeling in your head. You have a sound in your head. Could you talk about a time of how you communicated and got it across to Rick or to Rufus how you wanted the song to be translated that was in your head?
That was more Emilio's job.
How did he do it?
I came, he was able to, get people to sing his vision, and tell them basically, what to sing in some cases. Like that song, "Below Us All the City Lights," he had to go through it, but Lenny wasn't feeling that at all. But we had a big arrangement, so he had to do it. I mean, he basically did it word by word. And, I mean, it doesn't sound like it when you hear it, but, I mean, that one took a long, long time. It was all Emilio doing it with myself. I came up with a lot of the song ideas and a lot of the lyrics and, I mean, the music too, but I had very little to do with, transferring that vision to the players. That was much more Emilio than myself.
What were the kind of tricks that he would use, especially, I guess what I'm saying is my generation, younger generations, if someone's, like you said, Lenny wasn't feeling it or wasn't into it, when we see that, instead of moving towards it and engaging that and trying to get them to get on the right page, we can shrink away. And ultimately, that's how things fall apart. What were the kinds of things Emilio did to, I mean, Lenny was a serious singer. And so what did he do to get him inspired, at least to the point to get him to sing what Emilio wanted him to sing?
Well, he only had to do it on that one song because everything else, we only cut things that Lenny felt comfortable with. And the only reason we did it on that one song is because there was a major strings and French horns and all that arrangement on it. So with Rick, it wasn't with Rufus, you just kind of knew some songs he'd do good, some he wouldn't. And if you notice, all the songs on that East Bay Grease that he did were all up-tempo songs. With Rick, he could sing most anything, so it wasn't a problem. With Lenny, what he sang just absolutely fabulous and very distinctively, but a lot of songs that he didn't feel, and so we just wouldn't do them. And that's how it worked.
That's so. Do you remember? Amelia told me this story about playing in D.C. one time, and I guess Chester had left the band, and Clifford Coulter came in and played with a splint on his hand, but he was able to actually play the B3.
Yeah.
He was banged up.
He was playing with Bill Withers.
Right.
So,
right. No, that's what it was.
Bill Withers
Bill
story?
Withers. That's it. Bill Withers. Thank you, my man. So he had a splint on his hand, but the bigger story was that Bill, at the end of the concert, said, "This is my last final live performance." Right?
Yeah, and walked off while the band was still playing. It was surreal. but I think that was back in the 70s, so or early 80s or something.
It was 75 or something.
It was way back when, and so he obviously didn't retire. But Clifford Coulter. Yeah, I mean, he made it sound pretty good with that splint. I remember, it was kind of amazing, but he did a fine job under the circumstances.
How do you when you're not on the road and outside of private lessons, if you give them, how do you mentor younger cats today who don't have the touring circuit? They don't have the local venues that actually consider musicians as a profession. We're sort of living in this pay-to-play time period. How do you mentor younger peeps in music?
How we mentor people, we do horn clinics where the horn section plays licks and then answers questions and like that. So that's just it's kind of like a master class for young horn players, and occasionally the rhythm section does it too, and once in a blue moon the whole band does it. So that's the mentoring we do, and personally what I tell them is it's better to rush than to drag, it's better to play sharp than to flat, and it's better to cut the notes off too soon than too late. And then I tell bari players, don't let the low notes go flat, because young bari players are notorious for playing the low notes flat. So anyway, that's in a nutshell. That's how I mentor them.
Is it like an art of the rhythm I mean, I know you're a horn section, but I mean, what about rhythm?
Well, if in the unlikely event a rhythm player asks me what to do, I just tell them to keep playing, play with other people, and don't let people discourage you, because they will try. So anyway, that's.
Can you talk about a time when someone tried to bully you off the stage and how it made you stronger?
Well, I remember we had a real tough gig with Jimi Hendrix. We opened for him, so we were at the Berkeley Community Theater. We were totally thrilled. It was almost like a big break.
Right.
But he was, I don't know what his problem was, but he had the monitors and the speakers all moved around, and so we didn't get a chance to do a sound check or much of one, and we had to start the gig when the crowd was coming in under very adverse conditions. I mean, it was like they were doing everything possible to hang us up. I don't know if it was all Jimi Hendrix was in a bad mood that day, but Bill Graham, who promoted it, felt so bad about it that he gave us several good gigs to make up for it. So, bless him. Bill Graham was quite a nice mentor for us, and when people badmouth him, I always defend him because he treated us great. He was a great mentor. Anyway, that was discouraging, but we just played as hard as we could. I remember Rare Earth put us through some weird changes one time. Just unnecessary weird changes on setting up the stage.
I'm talking about specifically somebody that went after Doc Kupka and tried to challenge your ability and said, you don't belong here. And maybe you even got maybe being sounded on for being too drunk on stage, which happened a few times. Right.
But that was, I had it coming, I mean, I can remember we got a review at it was either I think it was the Roxy, maybe the Whiskey, one of them two on Sunset Strip, and the reviewer said that the horn section looked like the UCLA defensive line gone to bad seed. If it wasn't so funny, I would have taken offense. But at least they were funny about it, So, but no, I didn't let that discourage me. I remember the producer of the first of East Bay Grease didn't want to do Still Young Man because he didn't want to put any mushy bullshit on the. Oh, did I say a bad word on
No,
the
and you know
radio?
what this is? But this is internet radio, so let it fly, my friend. You're
Oh,
good. You're good.
okay. Anyway, yeah, that mushy horse shit, on the CD. But he let Sparkling go on there because it had jazz elements or something. So, but that didn't.
You talking about who was that? Rubinson said that?
Yeah, David Rubinson. Yeah.
Unbelievable. So I'm sorry, he didn't want any mushy bullshit, but that dude was putting out mushy bullshit in New York before he came he came to the East Coast.
But I guess that he figured Tower Power were about the funk or something, whatever. But as I said earlier, I'm just really glad that we play ballads too, because it definitely is a good thing to do both fast and slow.
What did were you playing the Fillmore when Howlin' Wolf and those cats came in when Bill Graham was putting on gigs?
Oh yeah, he was having all these eclectic shows. Yeah, Howlin' Wolf was there, and also I worked with the Loading Zone as a roadie before I joined the Motowns, which became Tower Power, and Bill Graham used them a lot, so I saw a lot of shows, at the Fillmore before I was in Tower Power.
Can you just, in terms of legacy, I know Bill was a businessman and could be rough, but the thing is that between you and the Airplane and the Dead and Santana, he was able to monetize you guys and turn that into a real circuit. And so, have we ever really recovered from losing Bill Graham as far as someone as a musical business entrepreneur? What has his loss meant to music?
Well, it meant that the Bay Area was no longer what it had been. The Bay Area was what suffered. I don't think the overall music business in the world, suffered but the Bay Area certainly did. It was never the same after that.
In what ways? I mean, did venues close? Morale went down? How did it change?
Well, just, instead of Bill Graham Presents, it was these other people who weren't near what he was. And so, the quality of the shows went down. Just the whole vibe changed. I mean, because, anyway, I don't remember specifically. I can't name specific things that became a bummer when he was gone. But I remember how it felt with him no longer being around.
Right. I think also what you're getting at is it really veered more towards into corporate kind of stuff as opposed to more of a family kind of. Bill Graham Presents exuded.
Oh yeah. Right. And I mean, he cared about the shows.
Yeah, I know.
Every bit as much as making money. And when the corporate thing kind of took over. With his death, it was just flat out money, and the quality of the shows definitely suffered for that. Or even if the money even if it was better, quote unquote, business, if the quality of the show part suffered.
Doc, I just we're 40 minutes into set 2 here. I wanted to ask you if you could share, how did you meet Mike Finnegan?
Oh, Mike! Mike's one of my favorites.
I mean, did you? All the thing is, was he
Finnegan?
Was he in the overalls with the Jerry Hahn Brotherhood at that time? I mean, I really need to know when you met Finnegan.
Yeah, we met him in 1970 at the on Broadway. We had a Sunday and Monday gig there. That really served us well, and it became quite a scene. And he came and sat in. He was a Finnegan and something else, some other name.
Wood. Finnegan and Wood.
Yeah, whatever. And so that's who he was with, and he lived up there still at that time. And he came and sat in and was very impressive. And then I didn't see him for a while. And then I hooked up with him down here in L.A. And when I moved down, and we actually wrote a few songs. He got real busy now he's with Bonnie Raitt, but when he was still with Joe Cocker, he had more time, and so I wrote 3 or 4 songs. As a matter of fact, we wrote one called Better But Not Good that's on my new Nature Doesn't Legislate CD.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I really like Mike. He's just great. He's fabulous.
Oh,
He subbed for Tower Power too when Roger was sick back in 2005, and it was such a joy playing with him.
You went to Japan
Play
with
with
him?
him
Did you go to
anytime.
Japan with him?
Yeah, we did about 3 months, including Japan. Yeah,
Unbelievable.
That was cool. Very cool.
Those jam sessions, Rico used to talk about those. Greg Rico used to talk about these jam sessions where, when Santana wasn't on the road, they'd go down, and you guys were there, and Victor Pantoa. A lot of. Did you play with those Latin percussionists? I mean, not necessarily like on gigs, but I mean in those jam sessions. Did those cats like Pantoa and Bobo and those cats show up?
Yeah, a few times. Yeah. Well, the jam session I would do would if someone wanted a horn section, or had a horn section, I would augment it, or if there's a horn section jam, and I would go play. I rarely went just to, like some the tenor players do just by themselves. But yeah, we had some fun ones. I'll tell you that.
If you could just talk about Tower of Power continues to go along in its. You've had some different roster changes, but the core is still there. The same cannot be said for Blood, Sweat, and Tears or Chicago, which I kind of look at as kind of contemporary bands of yours. Similar styles. What's the secret to longevity, Doc, in terms of, could you just talk about how you manage your ego and how you don't let your ego affect, that no one person is above the music? Can you just riff on that?
Well, for one thing, we've always paid everyone the same amount of money. And unlike like Chicago, I know doesn't do that, and a lot of bands don't do that. Which
what does that signify?
For an old-timer,
what does that signify?
Well, what it signifies is that people come. We can get good musicians. So when people fall by the wayside or whatever, we can get good musicians if they know that it's a team like that. So so we got a guy like Roger Smith, who is very close to Chester. So we got good replacements. And just the fact that you appreciate that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And, that therefore you keep getting guys like Dave and Rocco, and then me and Emilio. Emilio's the leader, and he was able to retain me, his second in command, as it were. Just keep in mind that the whole is greater than the parts. Be proud of the music and stay in good enough shape that you can keep playing. So we've done that. I mean, with Dave and Rocco both had absences due to health stuff, and then Dave's case the accident. But keeping these 4 happening is good, and then having people like Herman and the bass players we've had to sub for Rocco, that's very helpful to keep the whole thing going.
Does it also?
Anyway,
it just
proud of
also.
the music.
It's also like people know going in, not that there's no hierarchical power structure kind of thing. Or I mean, Emilio's obviously the leader, but in terms of money, it's not just about. It's not. I mean, there's some sort of thing there. Like I mean, Jerry was like that too with his band, like his own bands, where it was like everybody gets the same. It could have been. Ed Neumeister, just coming out of, college playing trombone with Ron Stallings and Merle Saunders, but they were all making the same dough in that Reconstruction band. I mean, there's something very significant about that. Like nobody's above anybody else.
Yeah, that's how we do it, and it's worked well for us.
Doc, this fall tour, are you going to be coming into to the state of Arizona at all? I mean, I'd like to.
We're going to be there in December in Phoenix at the museum, right by
At the
that gig we
Musical
did before.
Instrument Museum.
I think that's what it is.
Oh my, dude.
Yeah, there's.
I'm going to be
Check
on
the Tower website. It's 2 nights we're playing there.
All right. Well, I'm going to be up for sound check for at least one of them, and we'll have to do part 3 in person live on Facebook. All right.
Well, that'll be fine anytime. I'll do an interview with you anytime. You're very knowledgeable and very cool, and I appreciate it.
Hey, man, I look forward to seeing you in a few months, and stay well, keep healthy, and straight ahead, man.
All right, you rock on, and thank you so much.
Later on, Doc.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.